Groomman F4F. The retrieval of a Groomman F4F Wildcat fighter from the depths of Lake Michigan brought to light a fascinating piece of history. Submerged at approximately 160 feet beneath the surface, this World War II-era aircraft met its fate on August 17, 1943, during a takeoff attempt gone awry. Lieutenant Albert V. Newhall, the pilot at the helm, lost control of his F4F Wildcat fighter, resulting in a dramatic plunge into the lake. Remarkably, Lieutenant Newhall managed to survive the incident, but his aircraft was lost to the depths of Lake Michigan. During the wartime era, the United States military had utilized the lake as a strategic training ground for pilots. This decision stemmed from the concern that training exercises conducted in the Atlantic and Pacific might be vulnerable to potential attacks by Japanese or German forces. Consequently, Lake Michigan was deemed a secure locale for honing the skills of aspiring aviators. Bomb in the yard. In a community near Antioch, situated northwest of Chicago, a woman doing yard work made a startling discovery as she noticed something protruding from the ground. Curious, yet uncertain about its nature, she shared images of the object online. One concerned individual urged her to contact the police immediately. The uncovered item is believed to be a World War II anti-tank rocket, leaving the origin of its presence in her yard shrouded in mystery. The region, including the Great Lakes and Chicago, was host to military training exercises during World War II, raising the possibility that the rocket could be a remnant from that era. Alternatively, it's speculated that a World War II veteran might have brought it home, burying it in the yard and subsequently forgetting about its existence. Prompted by safety concerns, local residents were evacuated while bomb squad officers safely extracted the suspected explosive device. Ambiguity surrounds both the duration and circumstances of the object's residency in the yard, and uncertainty persists regarding its current status, whether it's inert or still possesses the potential for detonation. The bomb squad was summoned to securely transport the explosive to an undisclosed location where it was safely detonated. Fortunately, no injuries were reported in the incident. Do you own any antiques or relics from World War II? Let us know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Lost artwork. During World War II, Nazi Germany engaged in the widespread plunder of Europe's artistic treasures, accumulating around 650,000 pieces of artwork stolen from museums, galleries, and private residences. A significant portion of this cultural theft targeted Jewish citizens, encompassing not only artworks but also personal belongings. Unfortunately, numerous pieces never surfaced again, with many succumbing to destruction during bombings or disappearing without a trace, including renowned works by artists like Raphael, Vincent van Gogh, and Rembrandt. To this day, valuable artworks remain missing. The Germans' objective in this systematic looting extended beyond mere acquisition. They intended to establish the Führer Museum in Adolf Hitler's Austrian hometown, showcasing some of the acquired pieces. However, not every artwork was earmarked for public display. Some were branded as degenerate and slated for destruction, a fate shared by books, Torahs, and various cultural documents. While some items were indeed obliterated, others were clandestinely preserved, potentially for personal collections or black market transactions, as some individuals defied orders due to the cultural significance of the targeted items. Upon learning of this cultural plunder, the United States initiated the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives Program, MFAA, comprising scholars, architects, museum curators, and others from 14 nations. The MFAA's mission was to rescue artworks, artifacts, and significant items seized by Nazi Germany. Operating in combat zones, 2 MFAA members tragically lost their lives during the war. The Salzwedel Althaus See, an Austrian salt mine, served as a clandestine repository for some 8,000 Nazi stolen items. Positioned 2,600 feet underground, with an intricate network of tunnels, the mine provided a secure location, impervious to bombings, and maintained a stable temperature of approximately 46 degrees, ideal for preserving the stored artifacts. Despite the mine entrance being deliberately blasted, the MFAA successfully accessed and retrieved a substantial collection by July 1945, including 6,577 paintings, 230 drawings, 954 prints, 137 sculptures, and 129 pieces of arms and armor. The MFAA's accomplishments were astounding, saving around 5 million items from potential loss or destruction, and facilitating the return of many to their rightful owners. Operating on a limited budget and venturing onto the front lines, they demonstrated remarkable dedication. However, the saga of stolen artwork did not conclude with the MFAA's efforts. In September 2010, a routine customs check on a train from Switzerland to Germany led to the apprehension of Rolf Nicholas Cornelius Gerlet. Gerlet, son of Hildebrand Gerlet, the Nazi art curator, raised suspicions due to his nervous demeanor. A subsequent investigation revealed his modest Munich apartment harboring approximately 1,400 framed and unframed artworks by renowned artists like Picasso, Matisse, and Renoir. A search warrant, delayed by a year, eventually uncovered this astonishing collection. Despite selling a Max Beckmann painting for over $1 million during the investigation, Gerlet was not charged with a crime due to Germany's complex and voluntary compliance laws regarding matters of provenance and art restitution. As of the latest information available, Gerlet's vast art collection remains in storage, with its future and legal status yet to be determined. The Grey Lake Guns. In 2017, a father and son engaged in magnet fishing at Grey Lake Kings Weston Sluice near Street in Somerset stumbled upon a significant discovery. Their magnetic pole revealed 30 badly rusted weapons and weapon parts in the lake. Promptly recognizing the potential seriousness of their find, they alerted the authorities. Subsequently, the local police dispatched divers who further recovered an additional 80 weapons and parts, bringing the total count to 110. The array of weapons included rifles and submachine guns. The question arose, why were these weapons submerged in the water? The prevailing theory suggests that a post-war weapons manufacturing facility in the area may have disposed of the weapons in the lake after ceasing operations. Interestingly, a few years prior to this discovery, a group of teenagers uncovered around 80 rifles, pistols, and machine guns in a river near Somerset. Instead of immediately reporting their findings, the teens brought the weapons home, catching the attention of their parents. Recognizing the potential danger, the concerned parents promptly contacted the police, leading to the confiscation and subsequent destruction of the weapons. While initially believed to be relics from World War II, subsequent investigations revealed that some of the weapons found dated beyond the war's conclusion. This revelation has sparked additional inquiries into the motives behind dumping these weapons into the river. One hypothesis posits that a gun collector, perhaps grappling with concerns about legal issues and the preservation of their collection, chose to dispose of it in this clandestine manner. The mystery surrounding these submerged weapons invites further scrutiny and speculation into the history and circumstances behind their concealment in the waters of Somerset. Mass graves. In 2022, Polish investigators working in the Bialuty Forest, approximately 100 miles north of Warsaw, made a gruesome discovery. They uncovered 2 mass graves containing a staggering 17 tons of ashes. The somber reality was that these ashes represented the remains of around 8,000 Poles who fell victim to Nazi executions between 1940 and 1944. The tragic fate of those interred in the mass graves was tied to the Soldau Nazi German prisoner camp, situated near the town of Dzialdowo. This grim facility held approximately 30,000 individuals, encompassing Jewish citizens, Polish elites, and resistance fighters. The investigators were shocked to find that the victims had been subjected to cremation, with their remains pulverized into ash. These ashes were then solemnly laid to rest in 2 pits, each reaching a depth of 10 feet. To conceal the horrors beneath, the Germans had planted trees over the pits. Polish authorities expressed their commitment to pursuing charges against any surviving individuals who had served as prison guards at the camp. A grave was established on the site, and a memorial service was held to honor the memory of the victims. Regrettably, this was not an isolated incident of wartime brutality. In 2009, construction workers laying the foundation for a new hotel in the town of Malbork, northern Poland, made a harrowing discovery. Unearthing human remains, the initial count tallied 60 individuals, and shockingly, the bodies were found to have been buried in a manner described by local officials as appalling and inhuman. Upon the completion of the work, a total of 1,800 to 2,000 remains were discovered, including those of children. Malbork had experienced intense fighting in 1945 as German and Soviet forces clashed, with German citizens residing in the area. Investigators were perplexed by the absence of personal belongings, such as identification, buried alongside the victims. As of the creation of this video, updates on the fate of these victims remain elusive. Efforts to identify eyewitnesses to the events have yielded no results, and investigators express a continued lack of information about the mass grave and its occupants. Despite this, those exhumed were accorded proper burials, and authorities appealed for any leads that might shed light on the tragedy. Similarly, in 2019, another distressing discovery unfolded in Brest, Belarus. Construction workers unearthed the remains of approximately 1,200 Jewish citizens who had been forcibly confined to the city's ghetto from 1941 to 1942. Formerly part of Poland, Brest became part of Belarus during the war. The area was occupied by Germany, leaving behind yet another grim testament to the Holocaust. Tragically, the victims included women and children who met their end at the hands of the Nazis. Although the grave was discovered in 2019, reports from a Brest newspaper indicated that knowledge of a mass grave in the town had surfaced nearly 2 decades earlier. The community, however, might have been unaware of the grave's location and the extent of its tragic occupancy. To pay respects to those exhumed from the mass grave, a funeral ceremony was conducted, drawing the attendance of the local community and even the Israeli ambassador to Belarus, acknowledging the solemnity of the occasion. The Oklahoma Goodwill Discovery. In Edmond, Oklahoma, a remarkable World War II collection was unearthed at a local Goodwill store. The discovery occurred when a lockbox sent to the store as a donation revealed a secret compartment. Inside, the staff uncovered a treasure trove of historical artifacts, including Navy discharge papers, assorted medals, and a letter signed by then-President Harry S. Truman. These items were linked to a local man who had served in the Navy during World War II. The assistant store manager, speaking to the press, shared insights into the find, expressing confidence that the donor was likely unaware of the secret compartment's existence. Intrigued by the historical significance of the collection, the store staff embarked on a detective mission to locate the family of the deceased serviceman. Despite the man having passed away, the diligent efforts of the Goodwill team led them to living relatives. In a heartwarming reunion, the items were returned to the family in 2023. Goodwill staff emphasized their commitment to reuniting individuals with mistakenly donated items, highlighting the critical importance of the first 24 hours in certain cases. During this period, they can trace a donation back to the specific store where it was dropped off. Beyond this time frame, most donations are redirected to a central warehouse or facility for processing. This story not only underscores the significance of chance discoveries, but also the dedication of Goodwill in preserving and returning items of personal and historical value to their rightful owners.
10. The Jantina. In January 2022, Greek divers made a noteworthy discovery by uncovering a sunken Italian submarine from World War II. The Jantina was hit by torpedoes from a British submarine on July 5, 1941, in the Aegean Sea near Greece. The wreckage was discovered 338 feet beneath the surface of the water by Kostas Thoktaridis, a respected and famous Greek underwater explorer. The Jantina was launched in 1932 and it measured 202 feet long. This submarine was used during the Spanish Civil War in 1937. Italy and Nazi Germany were allies of the nationalists during the war. The Jantina tried to attack a destroyer but was unsuccessful. and sadly, that was the lone mission of the submarine during that conflict. The ship the Jantina attacked deployed depth charges to take it out, but the Jantina escaped. The Jantina left the Greek island of Leros because it needed repairs. The Jantina had an issue that rendered it unable to dive, so it had to sail on the water, and this made the submarine an easy target. As a result, it was discovered and sunk by the British submarine HMS Torbay. This was an unusual conflict where a submerged submarine attacked one that wasn't underwater. When it was attacked, there were 48 crew members on the Jantina, but only 6 of them survived the attack by swimming to a nearby island. Then, when the ship was discovered in early 2022, Italian naval records were used to identify the wreckage. 9. USS Greyback. Another US Navy submarine that was lost during World War II was the USS Greyback. It went out for a mission on January 28, 1944, but the sub and its crew of 80 men went missing in March of that same year. The fate of the Greyback was uncovered some 75 years later. Launched in 1941, the USS Greyback was one of the most successful submarines used by the US Navy during World War II. It was 307 feet in length and was responsible for the sinking of 14 enemy ships. The USS Greyback was sent on its 10th war patrol on January 28, 1944. It set sail from Pearl Harbor to patrol the East China Sea. Then, in February, communication was received from the USS Greyback, reporting the sinking of 2 Japanese Army cargo ships. Only 2 torpedoes were remaining on the Greyback, so it was ordered back to dock. Sadly though, that report would be their last. The submarine reported in late February 1944 that it was damaged by enemy aircraft. But the Greyback also reported that it had sunk a Japanese naval transport. After that, no other messages were received. The plan was for the USS Greyback to reach the Midway Islands, but they never arrived. Records existed from the Japanese military about the sinking of the USS Greyback. Coordinates were recorded, and they were reviewed in 1949. Researchers had an idea where the submarine was located in the Pacific. However, the data in the records was incorrect, and the mistake was discovered around 2018. This changed the location of the submarine by hundreds of miles, but eventually they found it. When research crews checked out the wreckage, they noticed that a bomb had been responsible for the sinking of the sub. The explosion had hit the hull, causing water to pour into the vessel, sending the USS Greyback to its watery grave. 8. Battle of the Bulge finds. The Battle of the Bulge was the last major German offensive during World War II. In a desperate attempt to crush the Allied advance in Western Europe, this epic battle was fought in Belgium, Luxembourg, and Germany between December 16, 1944 and January 16, 1945. Casualties numbered between 75,000 and 80,000 for the Allies, while Nazi Germany lost some 120,000 men. Since the end of the war, relic hunters have scoured the land where the battle took place to find treasures. And in 1994, a group of relic hunters from Belgium made some impressive discoveries. Jean-Louis Seal was one of the hunters, and using a metal detector, he discovered a helmet that was buried in the ground. After cleaning it off, Seal discovered that it was an American helmet with the name Cortez inscribed on it. The helmet's owner was also a member of the 2nd Infantry Division. Seal was pleased with his discovery and made additional trips to find more items with other relic hunters. One trip led to the discovery of a huge piece of a German Panther tank. It was a portion of the turret, and while they examined the piece, they noticed a hole. The tank had been hit by an American shell. More pieces of the tank were found in the vicinity by Seal and his fellow hunters. More items were uncovered when Seal and company found foxholes that were abandoned during the Battle of the Bulge. There were numerous items like canteens and machine gun tripods. Mess kits were also found, but they were nothing more than plates and utensils that were used by soldiers who needed to eat while in combat. Seals continued his work and is a part of a Belgian relic hunting group known as the Diggers. Seal and his companions have also found the remains of soldiers who died during the battle. His work is important because there are an estimated 78,000 US troops whose remains have never been located. Have you ever visited a war museum before? If you have, let us know all about it in the comments below. And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe to the channel. 7. The milk cans. Patrick Lesman, a teenager from Poland, was on vacation with his family in 2017 when he made an incredible discovery. Lesman was near Lake Jeziorak in northern Poland when he found 2 vintage milk cans buried near the shoreline. And when Lesman opened the cans, he was absolutely shocked. Inside was a uniform from World War II, a diary, and numerous historical relics. Lesman and his family contacted the authorities and they took possession of the milk cans. The relics were reviewed and it was determined that they belonged to the family of a Prussian aristocrat named Count Hans Joachim von Finkenstein. The area where Lesman found the cans was once occupied by the Germans, and it's believed that they were left behind by the von Finkenstein family when the Soviets were advancing into the area during the Second World War. Inside the cans were also personal documents, a watch, and some other items that were from World War I. Some of the items were then handed over to Waltraud von Finkenstein, the Count's daughter, who was 81 years old at the time. The rest were kept by authorities in Poland, and they planned to place certain items in a local museum. Waltraud von Finkenstein was glad that Patrick Lesman found her father's belongings. During World War II, Waltraud was living in the area where the canisters were discovered. But she was moved elsewhere when it was reported that the Soviets were advancing. Her father stayed behind though, but unfortunately, he was captured and died in captivity. 6. Danube River Finds. The Danube is a river in Europe that flows from Germany to the Black Sea, and World War II relics have been found in this historic river over the years. It was 2003 when a drought drastically lowered the river levels and exposed items from the war. The Croatian city of Batina saw numerous items pulled from the river in 2003. One of the relics was a German jeep that was used during the Second World War. However, that wasn't the largest item to be found in the Danube near Batina. A tank turret was visible, and another item in the water turned out to be an armored personnel carrier. Over the years, relic collectors have had luck finding World War II items near or in the Danube. Items that have been discovered here include a wallet, cartridges, and a skull. The 2003 Danube drought also exposed a massive find that was located more than 100 miles east of Belgrade, Serbia. They were surprised to find the remnants of a German warship. And at the time, it was believed that the ship was part of Germany's Black Sea Fleet. 5. Operation Smash. D-Day was an ambitious Allied amphibious landing in Normandy, France on June 6, 1944. Nearly 160,000 Allied troops made the assault on a heavily fortified German coastline. The bravery of the men who stormed the beaches helped turn the tide of the war in Europe. Before D-Day occurred, there was a training mission known as Operation Smash. The purpose of this exercise was to prepare for the storming of the beaches of Normandy. Operation Smash was conducted in April 1944 at Studland, a community in southern England along the English Channel. Part of the training exercise was deploying tanks from a vessel where they would be in the water and then land on the beach, providing much-needed support to the troops. However, when 32 tanks were deployed, 6 or 7 of them were overtaken by the sea. Water rushed into the tanks and they were all doomed. All of the tanks were sunk and 6 men lost their lives in the process. What's interesting about this training exercise is that the records of the lost tanks and the men who died were kept top secret for quite some time. The training exercise allowed officers the opportunity to avoid this mistake on D-Day. To this day, the tanks are underwater off the coast of Studland. And divers have even captured images of the tanks that were lost during this failed training mission. 4. Solomon Islands. The Solomon Islands is a country made up of hundreds of islands that are located in the Pacific Ocean, just east of Papua New Guinea. If you visit, you can explore some of the World War II relics that were destroyed during the war or were simply left behind. One of the main islands is Guadalcanal. it was the site of one of the most fierce battles during World War II. Guadalcanal was controlled by the Japanese, and they planned to build an airfield on the island. The Allies wanted to stop the Japanese from finishing the construction because the location would have allowed the Japanese to attack Allied bases in the Pacific easily. Fighting occurred from August 1942 until February 1943, and luckily the Japanese lost. The victory was a huge win for the Allies, and there are many World War II relics on the island for tourists to see. The Kinugawa Maru is a Japanese transport ship that was attacked off Tassafaronga Beach on Guadalcanal in November 1942. It's situated about 85 feet underwater, giving divers the chance to explore the wreckage that's covered in colorful coral. Another transport ship that was destroyed on Guadalcanal was the Hirakara Maru. This ship is resting 190 feet below the surface. There are numerous other dive sites in the Solomon Islands for divers who are interested in exploring the wreckage of the ships and planes that were lost during the war. And if you trek around the jungles of Munda in the Solomon Islands, you'll find anti-aircraft guns that were installed by the Japanese. You can even explore the remnants of bases and the airstrip the Japanese were trying to build during the war. 3. The German House. It was 2021 when Sebastian Yurtseven was cleaning his aunt's home in Hagen, Germany following a flood. Yurtseven removed a piece of rotting plasterboard and discovered items that were tucked into a space behind the wall. He found a gun, a gas mask, other weapons, letters, an image of Adolf Hitler, and various documents. The discovery surprised Yurtseven and his aunt. The home was purchased by her in the 1960s, and she had no idea that those items were stashed in the wall of her home. But what they soon discovered was that the home was used by the National Socialist People's Welfare Organization during World War II. This organization was part of the Nazi regime, and the items were likely stashed in the wall when Allied troops advanced in the region towards the end of the war. 2. Lost Airmen of Sicily. In Sicily's charming town of Sciancia, a significant historical find was uncovered in 2017, when experts from the Pentagon's Defense POW/MIA accounting agency identified a site that was believed to be the crash site of a B-25 bomber from World War II. An archaeological dig began in 2021, and it took 6 weeks to unearth the plane and members of the crew that went missing in 1943. B-25s were medium-sized bombers featuring a twin tail. These planes could fly over 1,300 miles for missions, and their bomb capacity load was 3,000 pounds. While the find was impressive, there were over 50 B-25s that were shot down during World War II. However, this discovery would allow researchers to know more about the men who were on board. What's interesting about this discovery is the German records show that the plane was shot down over a German airstrip. But one of the crew members bailed and their body was later discovered. They were buried in a nearby cemetery while the others were left with the wreckage. In November 2023, it was reported that one of the remains had been positively identified as Second Lieutenant Gilbert Holding Myers, the co-pilot of the B-25. Additional information about their mission was also revealed. The B-25 had taken off from a base in Tunisia with the objective of bombing an airfield in Sicily. Unfortunately though, the plane was brought down by anti-aircraft fire, and there are currently no reports available about the fate of the other crew members on the plane. 1. The Shasta Lake Ghost Boat. Recently, droughts in California have lowered the levels of lakes and rivers, and as a result, there have been some interesting discoveries, especially at Shasta Lake in Northern California. There had been rumors of a sunken World War II-era boat at the lake. James Dunstan, a World War II relic collector, decided to check Shasta Lake when the levels dropped in hopes of finding a Higgins boat, which was used during World War II to transport troops and do beach landings. And luckily for Dunstan, his work paid off. He found the boat. While Dunstan was excited that he found the boat in Shasta Lake, he was puzzled as to why it was there. Some 23,000 Higgins boats were built for World War II at a factory in Nebraska. They were equipped with a bow ramp and guns to send troops into battle in shallow waters, and they were 36 feet in length. Rumors suggest that only approximately 20 Higgins boats remain in existence today. The limited number is attributed to the fact that these boats weren't designed for longevity. The boat Dunstan found was used during the invasion of Italy during World War II and was assigned to the USS Monrovia. So, how did it end up in California? It was possibly purchased at a military surplus sale. However, someone heard about this story and checked some back issues of the newspapers. They found a picture of the Higgins boat being used by forestry service workers to clean the lake of debris following winter storms. But there's no explanation of how it ended up at the bottom of the lake. It might have been sunk there after it was no longer needed for service. The Higgins boat that was discovered by Dunstan was returned to Nebraska in 2023, and it was placed in front of a National Guard museum. If you were going treasure hunting, what relic from World War II would you want to find?
The raid on Zebbruge. During the early morning hours of April 23, 1918, the British Royal Navy attempted to block the Belgian ports of Bruges, Zebbruge, and Ostend. The raid was planned in complete secrecy with the intention of sinking obsolete ships at the canal entrance, thereby preventing German vessels from leaving the ports. In doing so, the British hoped to stop the Germans from threatening Allied control of the English Channel and the southern North Sea. The actual raid came after a failed attempt at raiding Zebbruge several weeks earlier, which was cancelled at the last minute when changing winds made it impossible to cast a smokescreen in front of approaching ships. During the second attempt, the Allies managed to sink 2 out of 3 block ships in the narrowest section of the Bruges-Ostend Canal. But this was not where they were supposed to be sunk, and within days the Germans were able to navigate U-boats in and out of the canal at high tide. While the raid on Zebbruge wasn't a success, it taught the Allies several valuable lessons that came in handy decades later during World War II. There was also a subsequent blocking attempt that managed to continue slowing down U-boat traffic, which was never restored to its previous levels. Balaclava Submarine Base, Object 825. During the frenzied arms race that took place between the United States and the Soviet Union after World War II, during the early stages of the Cold War, both superpowers also prepared for possible attacks from the other by establishing ultra-secure, heavily fortified military bases. The Soviets established one such facility, known as Object 825, in the small oceanside town of Balaclava on the Crimean Peninsula, an area that has functioned as a Russian military port for centuries. Built underground as a naval installation in 1957, the base was invisible from the open sea, concealing it from the prying eyes of enemy forces. During the 4-year construction period, builders blasted away tons and tons of rock to create a 2,000-foot-long tunnel that connected different sections of the interior. The base was designed to withstand the force of a nuclear attack and was equipped to effectively respond to one. It also functioned as a repair center for the Soviet Black Sea Fleet of submarines. The site was stocked with enough food, water, and other basic provisions to supply its 1,500 staff members for a month in the event of a nuclear strike. For maximum safety and security, a large set of doors and a concrete reinforced gate blocked each section of the base. Object 825 closed in 1993 after the Soviet Union fell. In 2000, it fell into the hands of the Ukrainian Navy. By then, the site had been significantly looted and damaged, with all its metal having been removed for scrap. It became a museum in 2003. Russia seized the Crimean Peninsula in 2014 and is reportedly considering the possibility of restoring the submarine base for military use. Marienthal Bunker. Like all other countries who became deeply entangled in Cold War hostilities, West Germany prepared for the possibility of nuclear warfare by building top-secret bunkers that would house its top leaders and officials if the need arose. The Marienthal Bunker, located roughly 16 miles south of the city of Bonn, between the towns of Ahrweiler and Durnau, was arguably the most important among the country's clandestine operating centers. Built inside two abandoned railway tunnels between 1960 and 1972, the Marienthal bunker was concealed beneath remote vineyards and forests. It was so well hidden that some have even described it as West Germany's best-kept secret. The facility was situated beneath 361 feet of slate rock and consisted of an east and west section, which were separated by a valley and connected by a passageway situated nearly 200 feet below ground. Each section was split into smaller subsections, and the tunnels connecting them were lined with concrete, had 2 levels, and were equipped with multiple emergency exits just in case. The Marienthal bunker was designed to withstand an atomic blast and to remain self-sufficient in the event of nuclear war. It had autonomous power, fresh air, and drinking water systems. If violence were to break out, the Marienthal bunker would have been protected by military units that were stationed nearby. Above all, the facility was sprawling. Altogether, it contained nearly 900 offices and 936 dormitories, and it was capable of accommodating around 3,000 people for up to a month without help from the outside. The bunker was abandoned in 1997 following the decision to relocate the capital of reunified Germany to Berlin. All that remains of the Marienthal bunker today are its gutted and sealed tunnels, along with the access buildings which have been welded shut. Have you ever been inside a secret bunker? Tell us about it in the comments below. Battery 223. There's a mysterious, drab concrete structure along the Atlantic coast in Cape May, New Jersey. And to say it looks out of place would be an understatement. The locals know all about it, but if it's your first time seeing the strange construction, it might take you by surprise. Officially known as Battery 223, the building functioned as a harbor defense battery for the U.S. Army's Fort Miles military installation during World War II. It was built in 1943 as part of a bigger modernization program that saw the construction of multiple fortifications along the country's east and west coasts. With 6-inch thick reinforced concrete walls and a blast-proof roof, the battery was designed to withstand direct hits from battleships and aircraft. The structure was concealed by sand and earth and was equipped with 6-inch guns that had a 9-mile range. Fortunately, those guns never fired at an enemy. Battery 223 was decommissioned in 1944 as the war turned in favor of the Allies and advancing technology rendered the fort obsolete. The Navy used it for radio communications for a brief period after 1958, and in 1962 it became part of Cape May Point State Park. The site looks much different now than it did 77 years ago. When the battery was built, it was roughly 900 feet from the shoreline. Today, it sits right against the water thanks to coastal erosion and rising sea levels, and it's no longer covered in dirt since it's no longer a secret, although greenery still grows on the roof. Bayonal. The remains of a sprawling Soviet airbase called Bayonal can be found in the Mongolian portion of the vast Gobi Desert, 19 miles from the nearest town. A crumbling arch marks the entrance to the property, which contains old barracks, aircraft hangars, monuments, supply depots, and an overgrown 2-mile-long runway and other disused structures. The concrete is cracked, the metal is rusting, and vegetation has reclaimed spaces that were once designated for human use. You could say that Bayonal looks like it was abandoned much longer ago than it actually was. From the 1970s to sometime during the 1990s, it operated as a first line of defense against potential invasion from China. Like many of the USSR's other bases, it closed when the Soviet Union fell. The entrances to the old apartment buildings have mostly been sealed off or blocked by deliberately collapsed staircases, making the interiors inaccessible to curious visitors. A group of explorers managed to bypass these obstacles and get into one of the buildings in 2013, but they mostly encountered garbage left behind by past squatters rather than anything interesting, although they did find some remnants of past residents, including old Soviet newspapers and several layers of wallpaper. Nomadic families are known to occasionally set up camp at Bayonal, where they live between rather than within the buildings as their cattle graze among the ruins. There are several other abandoned Soviet bases throughout Mongolia, including one at Choibalsan. During their days of operation, the areas surrounding these bases consisted largely of military personnel and their families. For example, after the Soviet Union collapsed, the local population at Choibalsan dwindled from over 300,000 to around 39,000, turning entire neighborhoods into ghost towns. The Alvara Bunkers. The rural village of Wisetown, later renamed Alvara, was established in 1825 in central Pennsylvania. At its peak, it was home to 165 landowners, as well as a church, a barber shop, and a general store. When the U.S. entered World War II following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in late 1941, the federal government made it an urgent priority to produce much-needed war materials and to establish storage facilities for any surplus. During the spring of 1942, authorities took possession of 8,000 acres of land, including Alvara, through eminent domain. Although the citizens of Alvara were bought out, the government allegedly told them that they'd be able to return someday and that they'd find all their buildings as they'd left them. But this ultimately proved to be untrue. Residents received cash payouts and instructed to move, and the feds proceeded to raze the buildings to the ground, then constructed an ordnance depot where the town once stood. Betty E. Yoder, whose parents were among those evicted from Alvara, told the Daily Item in 2017 that her parents received $2,400 for their 58-acre plot of land and used it to buy another farm elsewhere. Originally named the Susquehanna Ordnance Depot, the new facility consisted of 149 igloo-style bunkers that were used for storing TNT. It wasn't long before the government realized that they had overestimated their need for the explosive, so they emptied out the bunkers and divvied up parts of the land to new owners, including the military and prison owners. The portion of the property containing the bunkers was turned over to the state of Pennsylvania and designated as a game reserve. Most of the Alvara bunkers still stand today, but they're not always noticeable at first glance, thanks to the brush and foliage that often camouflage them from view. Some of the bunkers are still accessible, while others are welded or locked shut. Those that are open tend to be heavily vandalized. And although Alvara's houses were torn down, some of the stone foundations are still visible and the town cemetery is still there. Ark D0 Bunker. During the early 1950s, Yugoslavian dictator Josip Broz Tito came up with the idea of establishing a secret, remote bunker that would serve as an emergency shelter for him, top officials and military leaders, and other members of his inner circle. He gave his army the task of building the clandestine facility at the base of a large hill near the town of Konjic in what is now Bosnia and Herzegovina. Construction began in 1953 and took 26 years. Amazingly, the builders managed to keep it completely hidden from the public, and it remained a secret until the breakup of Yugoslavia during the 1990s. Officially named the Armijska Ratna Komanda, or Ark D0 complex, the horseshoe-shaped bunker contained over 100 rooms including living quarters, offices, conference rooms, planning rooms, and everything else that was needed to enable the continuance of governance in the event of all-out warfare. There were 2 kitchens, 5 bathrooms, a cryptography center, cable TV access, an operating room, and a communications center. The bunker was built to sustain a 20-kiloton nuclear blast, and it was stocked to keep 350 people alive for 6 months. It was climate-controlled and had its own water and electrical systems, along with backup systems that could be implemented in case of failure. Tito died in 1980, just a year after construction was finished, and the bunker was maintained but for the most part not used. During the Bosnian War, it functioned as a supply base. At one point, there were plans to blow the bunker up, but someone rigged the wiring. Today, the site is preserved in its original state, making it one of the few remaining undestroyed Yugoslavian landmarks. The Georgia Nuclear Aircraft Laboratory. Hidden in Georgia's Dawson Forest, the Georgia Nuclear Aircraft Laboratory, also called the Air Force Plant 67 or AFP 67, is a former United States Air Force testing facility that also served as Lockheed's nuclear aircraft test site. Built during the early 1950s, the remote site's main purpose was for developers to determine whether creating a nuclear-powered aircraft was a realistic goal. Because the facility's nuclear reactor was unshielded, employees had to retreat into underground bunkers anytime it was turned on. According to rumors, the radiation was so intense that all the trees in the surrounding forest lost their leaves. The Georgia Nuclear Aircraft Laboratory closed in 1971, more than 50 years ago. Yet most of what went on there remains a secret to this day. All that's physically left of the facility are the concrete pilings and husks that were left behind, as well as the laboratory's foundation and the remnants of a smaller building. Parts of the site remain fenced off and inaccessible to the public, just as they were when they were in use, albeit a little less closely guarded. The underground tunnels and bunkers that housed the personnel when the reactor was in use have been filled in, but people continue to search for them. There's supposedly no detectable radiation at the site, but I'm still not sure if I'd be daring enough to explore the property. Would you? Thanks for watching. Have you heard of any of these secret military bases before watching this video? Tell us in the comments below, and remember to subscribe. See you next time.